Hi everyone, welcome back to the shop. So a little bit out of character, I've always pretty much built homemades, and any mods that I did was sort of vintage stuff. But I've had this Stampede for a long time. I've actually had two of them, and it's a cool blaster. I've always sort of wanted to mod one, but things get in the way, other projects, and like I said, I've always been a homemade guy. But anyway, decided I'm finally going to do it. I've had these metal Stampede gears for a very long time. These are printed metal, and they're stainless, printed stainless. And I got this set here, and I got this set from Liam, the Smiley Bandit or something. I might have messed up that name. I'll put his name on the screen if I got it wrong, his real name anyway. But I don't know if he still sells these. I bought them from him many years ago, and I never did anything with them. So I got that set of gears, and then I actually have a more complete set of metal gears that I found on Taobao around the same time that I found these gears. So anyway, I think we're just going to clean up this circuit here, because there's a lot of junk. And we'll go from there. It's definitely going to be a sealed breech for short darts, mag adapter, and we'll see what we're going to do cosmetically. I'm not much of a painter. I just don't enjoy it. But I'll try and get this thing looking nice and functioning nice as well. So stay tuned, and we'll see what we can come up with. Alright, so I've cleaned up the circuit. You can tell all the safety switches are gone. Standard 16 gauge hobby wire. It's not silicon wire, it's just the stuff that I've used for airsoft for years. 15 amp micro switch. That's the highest amp capacity I could find. And it's mounted in a unique way, so it's actually removable and changeable if you ever needed to. It's I've got these bolts, 440 bolts, that are going into a custom epoxy mold that this just get pressed into. And then after it cured, I loosened up the nuts and removed this. And you can, it's that grease and epoxy method. So after cleaning the grease off, this actually just bolts in, and it's quite clean. All heat shrink connections and whatnot. And the wire isn't secured yet. It's just sort of tucked away into the shell. I also made this little adapter here, so I could use my old airsoft batteries. And then I have, your standard, well, sort of standard nowadays. This is the standard connection that everybody uses. So I could use a LiPo, or I could use all my old airsoft batteries, like this NIMH stick, which is a little bit big for this, but I have an 11.4 volt nunchuck that I could be using as well. And anyways, works fine. And I've got motor braking on. That's sort of the easiest way to do this so you don't get runaway. And if you're not sure how to do that, please look it up before you do anything like this. Little disclaimer, if you're not comfortable with this kind of work, please do some reading before you attempt this kind of thing. Shorting out these kind of batteries can be dangerous, especially shorting out a LiPo. So if you don't know what you're doing, either don't do it or do lot. Alright guys, so I got the circuit finished, got the pusher finished, like the breech pusher thing, barrel's done. It's a chambered 527 ID barrel, pusher breech, obviously, O-ring pusher breech, and this is a 9/16 brass tube with some other sizes nested in it just to reduce the ID. 3D printed piece for the guide, and also like a dart guide going on here, and then this part sort of interlocks with the magazine, just like the cutout on the magazine. This was the original one. This one was a modified Thingiverse part. I just had to extend it so it would fit into there more. The one from Thingiverse just like floated. It didn't like key into the old like dart tooth area. But then I decided to make this quite a bit longer, and then this part I made as fat as I possibly could. It's easier to print larger components, like it's printing standing up like that. This was getting a little bit too hot. And like I ended up dialing it in pretty good, but it just prints so much better if you make it bigger. So anyways, that's that. The breech is working really good. I've actually already shot this blaster, then I took it back apart and I added 2 modifications. So I have a motor braking circuit, and that's just, you know, your standard motor braking circuit like you would on a flywheel pusher gearbox. So yep, that's that. The switches are mounted with like an epoxy putty mold with 440 studs coming out. So these are totally replaceable at any point. They're not glued in. And I have another one back here. So basically how this works is this is your standard motor braking circuit here. And then this switch detects whether the plunger rod is in the catch position or not. So pretty much as soon as the catch releases and you fire, this switch is now open, and then that cuts the power to this. So it sort of gives you a little bit of a like time delay to let go of the trigger, so you can get one clean shot off a little bit more consistently. And I've noticed that it works. I like it so far. There is a very, very small chance though, like I'd say 95% of the time, this combo works really good and you get one clean shot off without any runaway, without doing like a shot and a half or whatever. But maybe like 5% of the time, you'll do the shot and then like the very last tooth will get caught on the rack, and now the plunger rod has shot, the breech is still in the closed position, and now this switch is open, and you're done. You can't fire, you can't do anything, you're stuck like that. You have to take apart the entire blaster, press this switch with your finger, and, you know, push the triggers to return everything to normal. So I actually added this switch here, and it's just sort of loosely in there now. I'm gonna probably mount it somewhere like that. And this, excuse me, this switch actually turns off this part of the circuit. So then you can just, you know, turn off that part of the circuit, pull the trigger one more time, return everything back to the firing position, and then you're good to go. You can turn the switch on if you would like, or just, you know, try playing with that switch off. But it is beneficial, but you do need this. If you don't have this, this is a royal pain in the ass. For that 5% that this malfunctions, you're done for the rest of the day. Like, you're not playing with this until you take it apart. So anyways, I'm just using a 9.6 volt NIMH, just because I have loads of these, and they're a little bit like safer if you're not sure about your circuit. I don't know if this motor can handle being overvolted so much, so I'd rather play with these for a little while and then figure out my motor, and then I'll buy like a motor that is suitable for an 11.1 volt LiPo, and then I'll get a little bit better firing rate out of it. But for now, I'm just going to play with this, because this is just the stock Stampede motor. And like I mentioned in the last clip, I got full metal gear set, except that segmented gear there. That is just the stock one still, and I'll just use that until it breaks. I think that's pretty much it. We'll just see how this works now. So right now, battery's connected. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I do have a fuse in here for safety, and this is just a standard automotive fuse holder, which is cheap and works great. So right now, the plunger rod is not in the catch position because I released it, and you can see you can't pull the trigger, but if I just disable that part of the circuit quickly, now I can. So now I can fire as normal, and then now that my switch is depressed again by the plunger rod, I can either just leave it like this and, you know, play with it like that, or I can put the switch back into the circuit and use it with the switch enabled. So let's release the plunger rod again. Now it doesn't work, so now I'll disable that switch. Now it works again. And so this is kind of the situation that I'm talking about. I don't know if I can get it exactly. I'll try. Okay, so it'll sort of be like this, a little bit actually more, but sorry, I'm just going to move you for a second. We'll get close in there. So you'll see that like one tooth is sort of hung up on the rack still, and it's now fired, and then this switch is open. And that was the situation that I was talking about. And, you know, if you have that switch enabled, you're done now. Like, you can't do anything, and you physically need to reach in here, and, you know, I'm not going to do it, but to continue playing. And now you can sort of see the difference in the two of those circuits, I'd hope anyway. And that's pretty much it for now. I will close up the shell, and maybe we'll fire it a couple times, and that'll be it. At some point, I'll probably do like a mag lever, and then maybe like a top rail, And I was thinking of doing like a master key, but if this doesn't fire well and perform well, there's really no point of making it look nice. So until this thing is like dialed in and firing really, really well, I'm not going to bother really doing anything cosmetic. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I will see you in the next segment. Something that I forgot to mention in the last clip is this was really helpful. This is the upgraded return spring by Worker. That has really helped with the firing, like consistent shots. And then I have a 9 kilogram mainspring. And this might actually be a little bit heavy, like, I don't know. I'd almost prefer a higher rate of fire, but we'll see if I can find a weaker one. I know there used to be a 6 kilogram spring available from like Orange Modworks, I think. But I can't seem to find it anymore. I'm pretty sure Orange Modworks is like borderline out of business. But anyways, so I wanted to show you something that made a huge difference for this build. So as you may or may not know, the stock plunger rod is incredibly weak. They break here and they break here. So I thought, oh, I'll just fill it in with epoxy. And I'll just use the stock, plunger rod. So this is filled in with a plastic welder and then sanded. So it's like, it's solid now. It's actually very strong. And the plunger head is filled in too, because the plunger head's all hollow. But you can see that the plunger head is sort of tapered. And then there's these reliefs here. And this basically, what's happening is on the return, the O-ring doesn't seal and it allows the plunger head to like breathe. And that just prevents like a vacuum at the front there. But I don't really think that's necessary. And like no matter what I did, E-tape, fatter O-rings, whatever, I could not get this plunger rod to seal very well at all. So as is, 9 kilo spring and everything that I just showed you, this plunger rod was getting like 100 FPS, 90 FPS, 95, 100. Sometimes the dart wouldn't leave the barrel, sometimes it would just fall out. I think the best shot I had was like 108 FPS using this plunger rod. Now, no other changes whatsoever. Same exact springs, same pusher, same barrel. This is the only change. I made this delrin plunger rod. It's a delrin rod with, I think this is just like a UHMW head. Doesn't matter. And then this is the Worker O-ring that I was using on the stock, modified stock plunger rod. And now this thing, like, it shoots really hard. It's, I've had shots up to 170 FPS. That's pretty damn good, considering all I did was change the plunger rod. I just took this thing over to my local airsoft shop and cronied it. And man, what a difference. So, that just a quick tip, change this plunger rod out if you can. Print one, make one like I did, do whatever you want to do. I just took it out to pad it and re-lube it. And yeah, I just wanted to share that. Another huge upgrade that you can do to this blaster is find yourself an old plunger tube. The re-release of this blaster has a tapered wall plunger tube, so you're only really getting like that much. Because by the time the taper seals on the O-ring, you're like halfway through the plunger tube anyways. This is the old school full diameter, and that might be responsible for the FPS boost. So I changed two things actually. I changed the plunger tube to an old school, single wall, like non-tapered tube, and I changed the rod. And man, what a nice blaster now. I'm really happy I made this. This is going to be actually fun to use. So I just, wanted to share that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe we'll do some firing at another time. Well guys, as you can see from that fun little clip there, it does work. It's a fun build. However, is it worth it? I don't know. Sure, it is fun now that it's done, but this breech was incredibly fussy. Getting the timing right is difficult. Motor runaway, you need to have good motor braking,
You know, if you want to sink like 8 hours into a build and get like, you know, the performance of a modified Night Finder but full auto, then yeah, sure, it's worth it. You know, if I did this blaster 5 years ago when AEGs weren't a thing and flywheelers still sucked, it would be awesome. It'd definitely dominate. But nowadays, with flywheels where they are and all the AEGs that are available, I'd probably say it's not worth doing. You know, unless you want to do it for some reason like I did. It is a fun, interesting build. There's two things that I had to do extra since I've talked to you last in the shop. The Mickey Mouse piece, or the plunger cap at the back, needed to be modified to change the timing a little bit. I made it so it triggers the catch slightly later than the stock one. That really helped. And that's just a 3D printed component. I also needed to add some porting on the front of the pusher to prevent vacuuming when the pusher loads a dart. I also had to cut down the barrel a little bit, and now I'm getting pretty good performance. Like what I just did now, I don't know how much that is, maybe 40 feet, but with a slightly angled shot, it'll shoot about 100 feet, and the FPS is all over the place. Like, you know, when people started doing these, when they came out, like Brash Breeches and whatever, everybody said it's great, but you need absolutely perfect darts. And, you know, nothing has changed. Sure, we buy these darts now ready-made from the factory, but you still need absolutely perfect barrel fit, good dart tip. Everything's got to feed and work, you know, perfectly, or else this thing jams. It's, you know, it's still pretty much what it was, even with the modern technology on the pusher and the gears. It's still a really fussy build. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I got some other projects in the works, and those will be coming out shortly. And like always, hope everyone is doing well, and I will see you again soon.